gin
Ah,
through this COVID time,
yes.
and yeah, no, not a good thing.
Not a good thing. Well, we are live now, Loris, so we can share what we were talking about
Okay.
not being a good thing in just a minute here. Hello, everybody out there. This is Dr. Rachel Valletta, environmental scientist with TFI, and we have a very special search bar this evening. Tonight, we're focusing in on a conversation as it relates to diversity and inclusion in STEM. Of course, this is a topic near and dear to my heart. You've heard me talk about it a few times, and we're often trying to highlight diverse and new voices here on the TFI page. And with that note, we're actually hosting one of our official TFI diversity and inclusion sponsors, Braskem. Tonight we have Loris Canahuati, and Loris is the Director of Improvements and Quality for Braskem US. And tonight, Loris, we'll be cheersing, but I understand we're having a hydrating happy hour between the two of us.
Yes.
So while Loris will be cheersing with her clear liquid, I'll be indulging in my favorite aperitif, Sambuca here. And I don't know, Loris, if you're a Sambuca drinker, but I have the coffee beans inside. Are you familiar with?
Yes, I am.
Yes.
I
La
like
Mosca.
sambuca. Oh, really? I've had a lot of sambuca as an after dinner drink to
Yes.
make sure it sort of help your digestive system. So
Yes. Yes. So
because
I'm cheating. I'm a little bit ahead this evening. But you mentioned you've picked up gin drinking the last few months. Perhaps it's a new favorite of yours. Another
yeah,
clear liquid.
yeah. So it's gin with a lot of citrics. So
Mm.
grapefruit, tangerines, and tonic water. So it's really refreshing. So after a long day, oh my goodness, you tend to forget your problems with that. So
Yes. So we'll pretend that's what you have in your water bottle tonight.
yeah, that would be nice. So.
So let's jump right in here, Loris. Obviously, you have a very distinguished position at Braskem, but it's been a long road before reaching this director position. So let's start at the beginning here. How did you make your pathway into being the director of improvements in quality with Braskem?
So I'm a chemical engineer by trade. So of course I worked through my career through different roles. Pretty much everything you could do as a chemical engineer, I think I did at one point in my career, up to the management. And once I moved to management, now I was a plant manager at one of our sites, and so being in manufacturing and being at management, it was something that I always wanted to do, and it was a tough road, but I got there. And now I'm a U.S. director of four of our technical teams, and these technical teams are project execution or capital for us, quality labs, our process engineering group, and our process safety team. So I'm a little bit more in the management technical people rather than managing people of all sorts of background instead. So.
And with that position, then I understand you probably have quite a sizable and diverse team then that you oversee.
Yeah, so I have highly technical people, SMEs or subject matter experts, even to lab technicians. So yeah, so it's a very diverse group, and it's a diverse group in the respect of even locations within the U.S. So I have, we have 5 different sites. We have 2 in the Northeast, and we have 3 in Texas. So, and that, and then also have lots of interaction with Mexico, as one of my teams actually supports Mexico. So it's a very diverse group. So
we should zoom out a little bit there then and recognize, of course, Braskem is an international company and based out of Brazil, I believe. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we are based out of Brazil. Our ownership is in Brazil. Our headquarters in Philadelphia. And like I mentioned earlier, here in the U.S., we are 5 different sites of polypropylene, as we are the biggest polyolefin producer of, in the Americas. And we also have a research facility in Pittsburgh. So.
Okay. And with that rich, sizable workforce, then you mentioned, of course, you have quite a diverse workforce. And not just technically then, but also identity-wise, right? So we're coming from multinational backgrounds, different genders, of course. What we wanted to hone in here, and you and I spoke a little bit previously about this, is your experience sitting on Brascom's Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Obviously, this is an effort that's near and dear to your company's heart and to your personal experience as well. So why is it that advancing diversity and inclusion, specifically in STEM, is of such great importance to you?
Oh, it's because, especially for me and for our company, okay? We as a society, we want to move towards a world where everyone is treated fairly, is treated equally and with respect. That's I may not have to agree with you, but I have to respect you. I have to respect you for what you are and who you are. And because individuals need to allow to be themselves. A workforce and a work environment where individuals are themselves, they tend to be more productive and tend to want to stay with the company and us be able to keep talent. So, everyone deserves an equal opportunity. Coming from myself, okay. So I'll call myself as a dual diverse. I'm a woman in a technical field, and I'm also somebody that was not born in the U.S. So English is not my first language.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, I believe that even though I'm a U.S. citizen now, I do deserve to have an equal opportunity as a male should, or a not, a U.S. citizen should. So.
Do you think those different facets of your identity have sort of shaped certain experiences you've had in the engineering field?
Sort of shaped. Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure. So I'm speaking here specifically about this idea of intersectionality, right? You mentioned you're a woman in engineering, and you're an immigrant to the United States. So these are different aspects of your individual identity. Are there certain personal experiences and professional experiences as well that maybe stand out to you that really shone a light on these differences that sometimes we draw in the professional workspace, whether it be between men and women or?
So one of the things is, yes, you know what, it's interesting as a women on a very male dominant field, okay, especially in manufacturing, because you do see a lot of women in chemical industry, but very few in manufacturing. Within our company, I was actually the first leader in manufacturing. And what I saw is there's definitely a difference on the way we think. And definitely, and it's important on having that diverse group, because we tend to be more creative and more open-minded about different things. Okay, so I'll focus on men versus women. Okay, men will focus on the task. Women will focus a little bit more on how that task is going. People are going to react to that task. To make sure it's accepted more. So, for me, it has been tough. It has been tough to get to to this level. But the most important part is that if I was able to get to this level, is to help others to get there. And not only, when I mean others, is others not only in the area on women or area on non-US citizens, but anybody that is in one of those marginal groups, help to get them and succeed so they can have an equal opportunity. So.
Yeah, and I love that personal impetus for you. It sounds like, just doing the right thing sounds so important to you. And, whenever I have these conversations, of course, we talk a lot about diversity and inclusion. I'm always baffled because it seems like the default, right? We should all want to do the right thing. But beyond just doing the right thing, I've been pretty intrigued to research this a little bit more. that diverse workforces do indeed produce better results. Some interesting research findings that I've come across shows that more diverse STEM workforces attract more talent and they outperform their competitors financially. And then when it comes to diverse STEM labs, individual research groups, they often outperform more homogenous groups of high performers in problem solving. So leading, especially important in the engineering field and the technology field, leading ultimately to greater innovation and creativity. Do you feel like you've seen that play out in your own company and in your own team?
Yes. Yes, one of the things that you talked about, to me, diverse groups equals diverse minds. Is equals creativity, is a broad viewpoint, and inclusivity, because, when we talk about D&I, there's two pieces to it. There's the diverse piece, and then there's the inclusion piece. So inclusivity for me is important to make sure we have points of view that creates a productive work environment. We've always, back in the 80s, we've talked about being diverse and even has statistics about diversity, but we were not including people.
That's so intriguing. Go ahead.
You know what I'm saying? We measure diversity, but we don't measure inclusivity. So that's why they're both important to me.
Yeah, and do you think that those concepts have sort of evolved over time? You mentioned specifically the 80s. It seems so close in time and yet so distant in time as well. It sounds like from the workplace, from the professional environment specifically, there's been probably pretty significant evolution on how we approach diversity in the workplace. And as you say, beginning to incorporate that inclusivity effort there.
Yeah, one of the things that, of course, has helped, I've worked basically with the same company, but different ownerships. And I think that the one thing that has helped to us is the fact that we're a global company now. And when there is a global company, you have to learn how to work with a diverse group, different cultures, different personalities, and so on. And it's interesting, as we became Braskem, at one point we were Sunoco. And as we became Braskem, it was interesting to see what the people that were ex-Sunoco struggle with. And it was around accepting diversity, accepting cultures. Because simple things as being on time. Being on time is a must in the US. It is not at other places. Or you can see me, I talk with my hands. That's not a US thing. That's more maybe in the Middle East. A lot of people talk with their hands, and people may think it's offensive, or too aggressive. But it's not. You know what I mean? It's a culture thing. And so that's what has helped us quite a bit in our team, in our group. So
yeah, and you're really speaking to the need to go up the learning curve here. I think that doing the D&I thing, doing that work, right, that we always talk about, it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of resources and it takes a lot of time. And I think one thing that Braskem does do quite well, and you folks have been recognized for this before, is sort of, codifying the importance of that work to the company by having those centralized positions. Of course, you have a senior staff member that leads these diversity and inclusion efforts. And I think it does speak to the fact that diversity isn't just a nice to have, it's really a company essential. Do you think that trend is sort of spreading throughout engineering more broadly and STEM spaces more broadly?
I think so. So I'm part of what we call the Texas Chemical Council, which is it's a council for the chemical industry. Texas is very strong in the industry, so they have their own council. What you find mostly people are familiar with is ACC, which is the American Chemical Council, which is a U.S. council for chemical industry. And one thing that is interesting around that is they have what they call sustainability metrics. And of course, if we all think sustainability, we think plastic, we think that kind of stuff, and it is not. One of their metrics is D&I. So diversity and inclusion. They truly believe, our council believes that in order that if we want to maintain and sustain the chemical industry, we need to have the diversity and inclusion program in order to ensure and attract and also maintain the talent that we need. So it's do I think we're making progress? Yes. Are we making progress within our company? Yes. And why are we doing that is because of the support the companies has behind D&I. So we have a very active diversity and inclusion council. And not only do we have that, is we have a high expectation from the leaders. The leaders have to support the program. The leaders have to have their own individual commitment to what are they going to do this year towards that program and towards them changing. And then most importantly is part of our culture. Within our competencies that we expect for employees to have, D&I is in there. There is actually bullets within our competencies that supports D&I. So I think this is how we're, at least within our company, we're making progress. And more you see as you go and recruit new talent, you see all the other companies competing towards the same thing. So yeah, so I'm hoping, and with, either race or whatever, especially with everything that we have going on right now, that we're going to be a much better place now in the future. So.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because we're sort of speaking to those high level field trends. But of course, we're in a very acute moment here where, especially in the United States, we're responding to very energetic Black Lives Matter protests. Here in Philadelphia, it's recognition of Pride Month. And so there's a lot of aspects of diversity that are on the tops of many folks' mind right now. Do you think that these efforts that are happening within the company sort of make it easier for individuals to be culturally responsive to moments in history that come up like this, right? Like it's easy to talk about the advantages, look to the data about the advantages of having a diverse workforce, but on the day-to-day when we have these instances of cultural recognition or major shifts in the culture, do you think sort of having this experience under your belt helps you folks be more aware and more sensitive to creating those relationships?
Yeah, definitely, because we all up to a point have unconscious biases that even if we don't want to, we tend to react differently just towards a certain group of, whoever the group that is that we have an issue with. And one thing that is very important that we're having, especially right now, currently in our company, is having those uncomfortable discussions. Yes, whatever uncomfortable discussion you're talking about. So for example, today, within my group, we have one around race and racism because it's the hot topic right now. Next month, we're having one. And the one that we're going to have is around Pride Month, which is, it's a little bit month, we're 1 month behind, but we're going to talk about that group. And again, sometimes it becomes very uncomfortable and people tends to open up. And at the end, my goal is one thing. You don't have, again, like I said at the beginning, you don't have to agree, but you need to respect. And you need to make sure those people, everyone deserves equal opportunities. So we need to forget about what group they're from or whatever. We need to look exactly at their talent and focus on that, not on their background or not on what group they're from, not the color of their skin or anything. What are their talent and their experience, and give them the opportunity.
So you mentioned something there that I'm kind of interested in exploring a little bit further. Some folks would say that instead of it's sort of this idea of color blindness, instead of not seeing color, that in fact we need to in order to grapple with these tough conversations. How do you begin to address those conversations in a safe space? And I guess more broadly, what I'm curious about is how you begin, both personally, but within your individual research groups to embark upon creating that safe space.
How do you begin?
Yeah, what are the concrete steps? It's wonderful. I think it does start with dialogue. As you mentioned, you folks are having internal topical conversations. And how do we, I'm curious, for our own evolution, how do we really make sure that we're creating enduring change? Because I think it does start with that dialogue, and it can be really uncomfortable to face those unconscious biases, for example.
So,
how do we take it beyond that?
So you have to start. The best thing is start with dialogue and make sure it's a small enough group that people feels comfortable with. And and having a good facilitator that helps you, that even though people may respond negatively, that can turn this negative into a positive, and help the rest of the team understand what this person is having issues with. So to me, I mean, so it almost like coaching sessions or mentoring sessions. We've had because of all the issues that we've had with race, we've had different sessions to talk about racial. And at the beginning we were going to have 3 sessions, and we opened that up to the company. And interesting enough, the amount of people that wants to be part of the sessions has been so high that we're now up to like 9 different sessions. And we've hired somebody, an expert from the outside to facilitate. And sometimes it gets very heated, the conversations, but you can't back off. You have to make sure and go into that safe space and break down the walls, so people feels comfortable. It's because just imagine working in a place where you have to hide your identity. That's you're not going to be happy. Because at the end you're what you are, and you have to be yourself. So
a couple things there that stood out to me. You can't back off. I love that dogged determination, and I think that's true. It takes, harking back to something we mentioned earlier, it takes effort, it takes energy, and working up this learning curve does really take a commitment. So that's one thing that stands out to me. But the second bit there that you wrapped up with, imagine having to hide yourself. This is something we talk a lot about when addressing queer experiences in STEM. And so a very specific example as it pertains to queer undergraduates, for example, facing sort of heterosexist caustic environments, they end up getting forced out of particular fields of study, engineering unfortunately included, especially so in physics, for example. And it's a shame, because otherwise we do lose able, intelligent, bright, energetic students to personal matters and perceptions of who they are as people. Of course, that has absolutely no bearing whatsoever on their ability to perform in STEM, right? And I think it speaks to this term that we use often when referring to women leaving the STEM field, but this leaky pipeline. And so yet another marginalized group in STEM, unfortunately, of course, is women, although women and men receive roughly the same number of STEM graduate degrees in the States. Only 28 or 30 or so % of women go on to be represented in higher academic positions. And the numbers are even worse, unfortunately, in the professional engineering field. I just learned this week it is International Women in Engineering Day. So happy International Women in Engineering Day to you. But unfortunately, this event has brought up one statistic that's pretty grim, and it's that the STEM workforce is only comprised of about 16% or so of women in engineering positions. So there's obviously a long way to go. Go ahead, Loris.
What is tough, Rachel, is, and again, it's because I sit there and look at a lot of these statistics, and when we hire, when we go out and hire from college, we'll hire, if 10 people that we hire, there's going to be 5 women, 6 women. At the end, in manufacturing, we may have 1. And we all try to understand why. And it's because it's not an easy field for women. And the one thing that, maybe it's because this was ingrained from my parents before. Don't ever take it personal. Just ignore it. Not everybody's going to like you. You're not a gold medal that everybody's going to like, and even gold, not everybody likes, and you just got to be persistent. But that's not the right thing to do. Maybe it has made me tougher and almost at times insensitive, because I have to block it in order to move on. And now people are not willing to do that. And this is why I'm trying to help and coach and mentor and be part of it, to make sure it is not as hard for them. Because, I think there's value for women in certain fields. Like, I think there's value from team members from, the LGBTQ community in certain fields. I mean, they're very creative. There's a creative mind to it that we all need, especially in technical fields. Who actually performs is who's creative and who comes up with new ideas. Old ideas, everybody can sell old ideas. New ideas is a different story. And why, if we don't have a diverse group, we can't get there.
I love that you addressed that, Loris. And I wonder if sometimes that sort of bite your lip and bear it attitude, there's sort of been an intergenerational turnover, I think, of that approach, specifically to women in the workforce. So it's wonderful to hear that you're advancing the cause from from a position of power now to be able to really advance those systemic changes.
And because you can see it. I mean, whenever you're in a room of people, each person has a different completely view of things. And again, I'm part of a very diverse group where, yes, we have, there's women, there's people from the Black community, there's people, then we have, white people, we have people from Brazil, and we all have a different view every time. And we all have to make sure and accept the view. And at the end, we come with a much better product.
Yes.
As if we with one, just, one view instead of a multi, national, multifunctional group. So.
And speaking again to that point that more diverse groups collectively make those more creative, exciting decisions and approach problems from a multitude of ways. So I love that we've come back to that. I do have one final question for you, and it's a little bit of a redirection from the line of questioning that we've gone down thus far. And it's sort of inspired by the fact, of course, that at the Franklin Institute, we work with a lot of younger audiences. And what's really, really important to me is this idea of representation. The phrase, seeing who you needed to see at the front of the room when you were younger. So I'm always very, very curious about individuals' experiences and their journeys that have led them to their current positions and where they sought that inspiration from. And so to sort of end us here, I'm kind of curious if you looked to someone very specifically for inspiration when you were younger, and who you look to inspiration to now.
So if I go back and look about who did I look, towards my professional career and who I inspired, I wish I could say it was a woman, but it was not. Again, because I was trying to trail a journey that another woman was not in it, at least within my company. Why I say it's a woman? Because it's easier to relate, and nobody understands what you're going through unless they're on your shoes. And but instead, what I had to do is I always had to look for leaders and individuals that took the time to understand me, understand me, and coach me on how others saw things. So it's interesting. I mean, if you ask me who was my mentor was always a manager, a VP, somebody more mature that, or somebody that had a daughter that wanted them to succeed. Currently our CEO, the CEO is really big on D&I and a lot of really big on women in this field to succeed. But a lot of it is because he has a daughter. He has a daughter that is in the same field and he wants his daughter to succeed. So he understands. So who do I look up for right now is, of course, is him. And a lot of it because he is one that he stands behind me and wants to make sure I succeed. And then, it's always, your parents had a lot to do with where you're at. And as I mentioned earlier, they're the ones that put that toughness to me and don't ever give up. One person may not like you, but that doesn't mean don't take it personal. It's just, you just got to think about is, it's their personal belief and move on to, because there's going to be somebody that is going to like you and is going to respect your talent and your experience. So did I answer your question? Is this what you're looking for?
Certainly.
And that's my main thing. And why I want to be, I'm on the council is because I want to be that mentor. I want to be that person that another woman or another person that is within one of those marginal groups wants help. They want help. Tell me, I want to help you. I want to help you and make you understand how you can be accepted and you can have that opportunity. I can help you also have that opportunity. So, and luckily being in, as a director and being as a leader of, quite a bit of engineers, I can give them that opportunity. Because all it matters is that one time. If somebody gives you that one opportunity and allows you to show who, what you're capable of that's all you need. So.
And I think that's a really powerful marriage there. Again, using your position of power to create the space for individuals of marginalized communities to flourish, but also helping coach them individually. And I think that's it's a wonderful boon, certainly, to Braskem. And I wish there were so many more of you, Loris, around.
Yeah, the one thing I'm always going to give somebody, and the advice is, years ago, somebody said to me, I had a leader that didn't promote me. I had a leader that didn't promote women, didn't promote me because I was not from the US or whatever. And later on in my career, I realized, the person was prejudiced and so on, and prejudiced towards what, I don't know, but he was. And somebody told me in my career, she said, Loris, you've been in all these roles for too long, but you understand you're never going to grow unless you're under that person. You need to move from under that person. And I did. I took a different path of my career just so I could do that. And surely enough, I mean, since then, the ladder was steep rather than, flat. And that's what, I encourage everyone, make sure you always get somebody that somebody promotes you, because all you need is that one time that somebody gives you the opportunity and to show your capabilities.
Right. So seeking those allies. You and I also spoke previously
basically.
about the importance of allyship here. And though, of course, we can't all identify with every individual identity out there, we can create space to learn and create change to be able to advance those folks. Certainly in the workforce, the private side, but more broadly within the scientific enterprise. So Loris, I think that's all I've got this evening. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your personal experiences as they relate to advancing diversity and inclusion efforts. I think that, as I say, I wish there were so many more folks that thought and prioritized along these lines. So it's wonderful to hear that there are such warriors out there leading by example as women in engineering. So again, I'll leave off on Happy International Engineering Women in Engineering Day to you. Certainly very well deserved. And I'll say good evening to our guests out there. Thank you very much.
And thank you for the opportunity. I mean, and I hope I helped someone out there, to make a change, and be persistent because my word to me is always persistent, because trust me, everybody deserves the same, and everybody deserves the same opportunities. So
excellent. Thank you. Wise words for us to wrap up on. Thank you, everyone out there, and have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
So Katie will stop the feed somewhere in there, and then she'll jump back in here.
I know, it's like, okay.
Yeah, it's an awkward sort of dance. Thank you, Loris. I really appreciate you speaking candidly with me and speaking to those